back everyone to Duane and Nadia's Food, Travel, and Fun. And today I am making an old favorite recipe. I've got a nice collection of chicken breast here and some Marsala wine. And yes, I'm going to make chicken Marsala. I've been making this since back in my early 20s. And I worked for a local restaurant, a place called Riccardi's Italian restaurant in New Bedford. And they made the best chicken and veal Marsala, and I've adapted it a little for my home cooking, let's say, just so to cook in my own kitchen. And I'm going to share everything I do with you right here today. So thanks for tuning in. I love this recipe. I make it whenever I think of it or get the craving, and let's see how it goes today. Thanks. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit of olive oil that I'm going to put in the pan, spread around. I like to spread it around everywhere. And yeah, I know I'm cut off a bit here, but that's okay. This is more about you really seeing what we're doing in the process. So the very first thing I did though was I preheated the oven to 375, and then I started putting this together. It doesn't use a ton of tomato sauce. It's actually uses a limited amount because it's really, the more tomato sauce you put in, the more you kind of cover up the Marsala flavor. And we want the Marsala flavor to be the star. We want it to stand out. So I'm gonna just make sure I get a nice coating across the base of this, which, as you can see, it's nicely coated at this point. And I'm going to add, first I have the Parmesan cheese. And I'm going to start by adding the Parm first. And the reason I do the Parmesan cheese first is because it has a harder time melting. So I want it closer to the pan itself so that I don't end up with a lot of like half melted Parmesan cheese. I'll also in the end be putting a little bit on top. So, but we use 2 cheeses in this recipe, or I use 2 cheeses, but you are free to use whatever cheese you like, although I really recommend making sure you include the Parmesan cheese. So the second cheese I like to use in this recipe is the mozzarella. And you know, there's mozzarella in pretty much every good Italian dish that you're going to find out there. So we're going to include it here for ours. And mozzarella, you can use a good amount of mozzarella. I would say, you know, this is the 2-cup package, and I would say you're at least going to end up using a cup of the mozzarella on the bottom. And I do like to put a little bit on top as well. It looks like, so when it's done, you have this nice bed that really hides the tomato sauce that's under there. So you know you kind of have enough cheese when you can no longer see the sauce. And that's our first step. That preps that little pan that'll be ready for to go into the oven later once I've added the chicken. And the next step is actually the chicken. So we have nice big breasts here, and I don't use the waffle side, I use the flat side. I'll even put it down, but I will pound the chicken breast down to get it all to about the same thickness. Chicken breast is already pretty tender to begin with. So you don't have to really beat the heck out of it. Unlike veal, which you have to get to a nice thin, and you would use the waffle side on veal. You have to really get it a nice consistent thin thickness. But for me, that's pretty good. It wasn't much pounding, as you can see. It's all spread out and flattened about a nice, I got a good 1/2 inch to 3/4 thickness, whereas originally, you can see right there, this was here, I'm gonna turn it this way, and you can see, yeah, it's pounded down quite a bit from where it started. So let me finish up all of these chicken pieces, and I'll come back. Although before I do that, I'll show you one thing. So we don't want to cut pieces too small. It can be bigger than bite size on this recipe. When the pieces are too small, they tend to fall apart. And we don't want our pieces falling apart at all because they've been pounded. If you don't pound them, you can actually cut them smaller. But once you've started to pound them, the size, you're really limited by how small you can make these. And I did wash my hands right before I did this, so I'm not like contaminating the meat. I'm probably contaminating my hands, so I'll wash them again. But yeah, so let me get these all pounded, get them all cut down to size. I'm also going to dice up my onion that I'm putting into this recipe. You can use, I love using mushrooms, but I don't have any fresh ones, so I'm just going to use onion and a bit of parsley into the recipe, some fresh parsley that I had chopped up. Okay, welcome back. As you're about to see, I got all my chicken all pounded and chopped up into good sized chunks. And I got about 2 cups of flour in here, which I'm going to add a good, at least a teaspoon of pepper, about a teaspoon of salt, and the same for garlic. So I've added all of that, and now I'm going to blend that in. Now this is an optional step. You can just work directly with just the flour, but I kind of like the way you're making a flavored coating as opposed to just a plain coating. The coating is necessary because when you add the wine in, you want it to be able to thicken up and make a nice sauce. So you really have to work with flour to do that. But you want a very light coating on your chicken. So you don't want them like all covered and battered heavy and whatnot. So I'm going to add this in a couple of phases. I'm not going to do it all at once. I'm going to do it in a couple. And I'm going to get it nice and mixed and make sure everything is fully coated with flour, which is coming along. And this is definitely more flour than you want on your pieces of chicken. This is not how heavy you want them coated when they go into the pan. And that is why I use this strainer. And I'll grab what I can, and I'm going to give them a nice good shake. I'm going to shake them up. I don't care if pieces fall in, I'll shake them in a minute, come back to them. But you know you got a good proper coating. Whoops, I think I lost one. Did I lose one? I might have. Oh, it fell in the pan. When you can really see the chicken through the flour. And I'll put that aside, and I'll go after the next little batch here. Shake off all that flour. And as you can see, it reaches a point where the flour just stops coming off. And that's where it's perfect. So I'll add that in, and then I will add in this last batch. So this is a very big batch that I'm working with here. I had 6 breasts. I would say normally I'll only do it with 4. But we had the breasts, and I love it, and I don't mind leftovers. So once again, mix it up, coat it nicely, get it all ready to go. And from here, this is going right into the pan with a lot of butter and the onions. And that's when I'll even add the parsley in as that's cooking. You want this to brown up nicely. So it's going to be cooked over a fairly high heat. And then in the end, you actually flame it, or I will. And you really have to have a high heat for the flaming to work. So this isn't a great one to do over an electric stove, although I've done it and I've used a lighter to get it to flame up. So I don't recommend it. I really think that you should have like a gas stove doing this project. So, but for those of you that don't, it can be done if you're very careful and you use a lighter, and that is to basically burn the alcohol off and to help it to thicken up and form that sauce that you really want to see. So, all right, I'm almost done here, and I will catch you when I'm over at the pan. All right, everyone, so I'm over at the stove, and I've melted about a half a stick of butter into this pan. You need a lot of butter, and sometimes you might even have to add a little more. The object here is this pan is pretty hot. It's on at least a 3/4 flame. And I'm going to add the entire batch in, even though it is quite a lot of chicken. I'm going to add all of this in, and I'm going to keep moving it, turning it, letting it all take in that butter and start browning it. So as it starts to brown, I'll flip it and brown it some more. This, like I said, this is more than I usually put in a pan this size, but I am going to add a little bit of extra on the salt, the pepper, garlic, all three, and I'll add in the parsley as well. I don't want to overdo too much because I'm actually going to add in on the garlic, because I am going to add in some minced garlic, and yes, it's coming out of the jar that we always use, out of the bottle. And you know what? You got something that works. It works well. It smells great. I'm going to add it later. Once this starts to brown up, I'll get it in there. But I'm going to start adding in a bit of the, and I think that's probably enough parsley for the whole recipe. Doesn't have to be a ton, just enough to kind of season things up. As I start flipping it around, I'll be doing this for a few minutes. It doesn't take long. Once you actually start to brown up and all the individual pieces of chicken are not sticking to each other, that's when you're ready to add in the wine. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to keep cooking this. I'll bring it back. All right, everyone. Well, this has been cooking along for about 7 or 8 minutes or so. I'm going to add a nice dose of garlic. At least about this is a big batch, so I'm adding a tablespoon. Smaller batches definitely don't need as much. But this is a nice big batch, so I'm adding a good amount. And I'm going to mix it in. As you can see, it's really starting to brown up. And now with that garlic that just kicked in, like the smell is just out of this world. So now I'm on full flame because the next step is the final step in the cooking process, and that's to add the wine. Because there's so much meat in here, it's going to be difficult to get the pan temperature up enough to get it to flame, but I'm going to give it a shot. Like I said, usually there's about 1/3 less in here. There's usually only 4, not 6 breaths. And I've even done it for just me with like 2 breaths, which is easy to work with. But as you see, I've had time to practice. So you can use any type of Marsala wine you like. We happen to have this Taylor Marsala wine, and I've done it with the off-the-shelf from Stop & Shop cooking wine. But Marsala cannot be substituted. I've tried sherry, I've tried white, I've tried other substitutes. There is none. It's got to be Marsala. So the recipe just, it failed horribly with sherry. Never do that again. So, but that's what I had, and I was hopeful. And since I was halfway through cooking it at the time, really couldn't get to the store. But you can really hear it sizzling, and that's a necessity to know that you're really getting the temperature up. If it's not sizzling like this, it's not hot enough. So I'm not even sure if this is hot enough. But I'm going to give it like just a little longer to make sure that pan is really cooking along. I want this to flame up. It's fine if it doesn't, but it really cooks off the alcohol and gives you a much richer, stronger flavor because it condenses down and you get a better sauce on your chicken. So, okay, she's loud, she's steaming, here we go. Sadly, it did not flame up like I wanted. There was just a bit too much in the pan. It didn't reach the temperature high enough. I saw a little flaming, but it really didn't. It should have flamed all over the whole pan, and that didn't happen. So, luckily, the recipe still works. So, I said I'm going to let it cook down just a minute or two in here, and then this is going into that pan that's going to end up going in the oven, and I'll show you that. I'm going to do that right here at the stove. Let me grab that pan. And remember this little pan here. Let's see. I'll bring it over more so I have it on camera here. I'm I'm turning this off. Make sure everything gets a nice coating. And I'll bring this over. Oh, yeah, I know you can see it. And I'm filling the pan. That's done. I'm going to get it kind of level everywhere. Don't really want it sticking up over the top. And oh my God, does this smell good. This is just, it smells good. It looks great to me at this stage. And I've seen it a few times, so that's, there we go. I'm going to give you guys a nice, good look at what we got going on here. Make sure that levels out in that pan nicely, which it's doing pretty well. All right, I'm going to bring it over to the counter, get a little bit of the top cheese and sauce on it, and we'll get this thing in the oven. Thanks, guys. So it's looking really good, but this is still not ready. I'm going to give it some more time. Come around. Okay, so, wait. Okay, so it's done. It is cooled off just a touch. I made a little bit of pasta for the side, and gonna get us a bit of sauce for our pasta. Wow, and that's a good start. There we go. Yeah, that looks like plenty on each. And now I'm going to dig into the chicken, which, let me throw on a little glove here so I can actually dig in nicely as it comes out. There we go. And we'll get that on the plate. There's some nice sauce in there. Lots of cheese. That is a nice mound for me. And I know you won't have as much, but...
I'm hungry.
But I know you're hungry. Yeah, you are tonight, aren't you?
To the dentist. I had a horrible day at the dentist.
Yes, you did. Okay, well, then you're getting a whole bunch. Look at that.
Okay.
Okay, so let me push this aside. And I know you love your Parmesan cheese on your pasta, of course. Mm-hmm. And we can even sprinkle a little bit extra on the meat. There we go. Just a little bit. On the pasta. And there you go. Awesome. And hon, our dinner is served. And there you go. You tell me. What do you think?
That looks so good.
Well, we're about to find out.